Come on in. Have a seat on the couch. Enjoy the stream from the On Fek Circle, presented by JFtC.com and the Jays from the Couch radio podcast. This little misadventure streams at you live every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on the Jays from the Couch YouTube channel. You can also pick it up at the Jays from the Couch Facebook page. And if you're one of those Twitter people, at Jays from Couch, live stream will be there for your enjoyment. And you can always go back to the archives for all that place and watch the show at your convenience. I'm your host, the Fekless Wonder, Steve Fek. Episode number 7 coming at you in a little bit. But I want to talk about something revolving around the number 7. Really, 7 p.m. Eastern Time is now officially, well, unofficially official, Jays from the Couch time. Because on Sundays, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, our mothership program, Jays from the Couch radio podcast hosted by Sean Doyle, he brings in a rotating cast of couchers, and quite often we have outside guests as well. We've had Shai Davidi, we've had Keegan on the program just past Sunday, episode 250 podcast episodes. Sean's doing something right. Make sure you tune in. But basically, we had Ed Camus from Empire 161, a Yankee apologist, on with Sean. It was a great show. Go back and check the archives after you watch this show. And almost as important as the mothership program, Thursday nights, Jays from the Couch time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. It is Sunny Side of the Dome, and that's hosted by my friend and colleague, Karen Suter. She is the girl with Blue Jay colored glasses, but it's not blind fandom. Karen knows her baseball. She absolutely knows just about everything Blue Jays. So if you want to tune in and not only enjoy yourself, but get a fix of Blue Jay news with a really unique perspective, you need to tune in to Sunny Side of the Dome on Thursdays, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on the Jays from the Couch YouTube channel. And also, this is a public service announcement to the person that stole Karen Suter's Cabin Biggio bobblehead from her home today. We know who you are. So you've got less than 24 hours to turn yourself in or bring the bobblehead back to Karen, or you're going to have to face the consequences. I'm originally from New Jersey. I know people, okay? Enough said. Give Karen back her Cabin Biggio bobblehead. Like I said, this is episode 7. We're trying something a little bit different this week. I want to make it a monthly occurrence on the On Fek Circle, and it is a segment that we're going to call Loaded Questions with Fek. You see there the @US of Jays. You can send your questions in advance of next month's episode. You can send questions to you at US of Jays at Twitter, at Facebook, even now the new Instagram page at US of Jays. I'm an old guy, but I am cutting edge. I have bad graphics, but I am a cutting edge kind of guy. So you'll be able to reach out there. And certainly during this live stream, if any questions occur to you as we go through the questions that we've already had submitted this week, by all means, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, type in your question. I'd be happy to answer it. Now, we start off with 3 questions. So it's a new segment, and we have to kind of ease our way into things. We can't go totally crazy. Hopefully, you'll have some questions to add to the program. The first question was from an Instagram follower by the name of Cough Drop. I believe she follows Jays from the Couch on the YouTube channel as well. And basically, the question is, what's with the hat? I mean, I get that you're old, but shouldn't you be wearing a baseball cap instead? Well, basically, it's theater of the mind there, Cough Drop. I'm trying to portray an old school kind of sports writer type of thing, wrinkled shirt, tie that doesn't match. They always have a hat that's kind of tilted off to the side. And I tend to be more of an old school baseball fan. I eschew analytics for the most part, not totally, but for the most part. So I'm trying to give you an ambiance, set an atmosphere of an old school kind of sports writer, sportscaster kind of guy talking about your 21st century Blue Jays. So that's what's up with the hat. I might ditch the tie occasionally, but I think the hat has to stay. I have a feeling that Cough Drop's question might have came from her mother, not necessarily from Cough Drop direct. It's a clammy tale. A more serious question came from Pats Fan 14, who follows Jays from the Couch and most of the Jays from the Couchers. That came from Twitter. And it's more really of a statement than a question, but I'm kind of going to turn it around into a question. They, meaning the Jays, simply have too many DH quality players on the team, and you can add Kirk in that group. He had a hot take. If Kirk makes a big splash, hits, as he called it, rakes into May, is it time to trade Teoscar Hernandez? Jays have to get some more guys like Billy Smith and Joe Ross or those kind of names. An old guy like me, I'm already half gone. I need to have easier names to pronounce. But it's an interesting proposal. The Blue Jays certainly do have a bunch of DH types. And it's only going to probably increase as Springer gets older, as they move more younger guys onto the rosters. Some of the veterans are going to maybe have to get DH time. Vladdy, it looks like he's going to work hard to be a first baseman. So I think that is really a good sign. But Rowdy Tellez, at best, he's a DH. I mean, it frightens me to watch him play the field. Teoscar Hernandez really is more of a DH type, great hitter. If the Jays are smart, they would probably play Randall Grichuk in right field, take advantage of his defensive prowess, give Jonathan Davis some rotation there, as well as just giving Hernandez steady at bats in the DH slot. It'll rotate through. Obviously, players have to rest and all of that. But do you trade a Teoscar Hernandez for one of the big pieces you need? And I believe that Pats Fan 14 is a big believer they needed to add a pitcher in the offseason, as I've been preaching, since this show began. It wouldn't hurt to have an actual real third baseman. So it's an interesting thing to ponder. I don't know that Tio is the guy that you want to trade. For me, it's Rowdy Tellez. You sell high on Rowdy Tellez. Everybody thinks, he's another analytics darling. He's a Derek Fisher that probably won't get hit in the head with a fly ball. He has a tremendous ceiling, but I'm not sure how far down he would fall into the basement if he really can't figure out major league pitching on a regular basis. He certainly had a terrific first 2 games. So maybe you trade Rowdy, free up the DH slot for Teoscar, have Grichuk and Davis play right field. I think for a playoff team, a playoff contender, which I'm still not sold that the Blue Jays really are one. I think they're going to be flirting with the wild card, but I just, there's too many questions with their pitching at this point. Okay, it's early. It's still spring training. So let's not get too out of control about things. It would not hurt, to actually get your lineup and be a little bit more flexible. And if some younger kids, as Jason McDonald from Jays from the Couch wrote today, maybe some younger kids can come up during the course of the season. Hard to say. Again, we're still the first week of spring training. The Blue Jays are 2-0-1. They're undefeated. And by the way, I don't care if it is exhibition or shortened innings. You can't tie a baseball game. I'm sorry. This isn't Japan. You can't tie a baseball game. There's no tying in baseball, to paraphrase Tom Hanks. Okay? There's no tying in baseball. Find a way. Put the runner halfway between third and home if you want to, just to get a run to score. But, you can't have a tie. I'm sorry. In spring training, you can't have a tie. I understand what they're doing. Oh, the players have to be eased in. They only had a 60-game schedule and blah, 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 blah. Okay, I get it. I get it. If you want to shorten the game, fine. But there is a way to actually come to a resolution and not have a game tie. But I digress. That's not one of the questions that came out here. And again, if you do have a question and you're watching the live stream, don't be shy. Pop it up on the screen. Sean Doyle behind the scenes here. We'll take a look at your question. Pop it up. And my guess is the more embarrassing to me, the better it is for everybody at Jays from the Couch. So again, don't be shy. Put the question on up. The third question we got is from Lars Nelson, who is from Princeton, Ontario, and he sent a question to the USF Jays Facebook page. Do you think the Blue Jays fan, and I guess he meant in general, the average Blue Jay fan, lacks a real knowledge of team history? You know, he made a point. There was baseball in Toronto before 1992 and 1993. And that's a tough question to address. Many people that interact on social media are, not bitter old men like me. I do it because I want to see what everyone is saying, and it makes potentially for a better show and better articles that I might write at jaysfromthecouch.com if I'm up on all this social media stuff. So since they're younger, to them, maybe some of them weren't even born when the Blue Jays won their 2 world championships in 1992 and 93. So when we talk about, Joe Carter or Roberto Alomar, the big stars, Dave Stewart, David Cohn, Roger Clemens, those guys, they're going to know who it is, Carlos Delgado. But the guys that got them to that point and the role players, people aren't going to remember Kelly Gruber or Nelson Liriano. Or certainly, I would think they maybe would know George Bell. They would know Jesse Barfield, ideally. But like Lloyd Mosby, Bob Baylor, Garth Orge, all of those guys going back to the expansion days, I don't think that Blue Jay fans as a whole really remember it. It's not that they're blocking it out of their memory. Expansion teams always struggle. In some of those early Blue Jay teams, it was difficult to watch. Somehow, it was always 10 or 15 degrees colder when the Blue Jays were playing, the better teams in the league, the A's and the Red Sox and the Yankees. Those games just seemed to last forever. And that wind off Lake Ontario just cut through you at Exhibition Stadium because they were tough teams to watch. But I think it's unfair to say that, as a generality, Blue Jay fans don't have a respect for their history, Lars. I think they're just so inundated with information about today's players, and the young core and Nate Pearson and Gurriel and Groshans and all this information coming in on Sportsnet or TSN, MLB.com, all of this information, Fangraphs and StatCast, all this stuff. They're not talking about older players. They're not comparing, let's say, Kevin Biggio to Roberto Alomar or to Bob Baylor or Bo Bichette to Tony Fernandez. They're not making the comparison back to the good old days, the golden age, if you will, of the Blue Jays. They're just comparing them to either current day players or they're comparing them to, their teammates or their contemporaries or people, already in the organization. They're not taking that look back. And that's kind of sad because the Blue Jays have had some just wonderful, wonderful players. Bob Baylor, Ron Farrelly, who they said he was 37 when he came over in the expansion draft. I swear to God, my dad watched him growing up as a Brooklyn Dodger before he went to the LA Dodgers. I know that's not true if you look in Baseball Reference, but it just seemed that way. He just played forever and ever he played. He was an original Expo. Yeah, I mean, he was just around forever. So you had all those great characters. Bobby Cox got his managing career kickstarted here in Toronto. And I always wonder what would have happened if he had his contract extended. Doug Alt. There you go, Doug Alt. Ernie Witt. I might start crying here. Rance Mullenix. Yeah, I mean, see, there you go. See, Lars, it's not a lost cause. Like the beautiful day Doug Alt cracked the first home run. Yeah, see, those are names that every Blue Jay fan should remember. And occasionally, pick up a book. Or if that's too hard, go on the internet. Baseball References there. There's all kind of Toronto history blogs as well, I'm sure. Just, go back and look about where you came from. Everybody's into ancestry and DNA kits and things like that. And you want to find out where your sixth great uncle, on your father's side through, an illegitimate, marriage or something came from. But you don't want to go back and see who Doug Alt was, or who Bob Baylor was, or Ernie Witt, or Alan Ashby, and I could just go on and on about all these guys. So take heart, Lars. I don't know you well. I know enough about you that, yes, you're old enough to remember those guys, but you were just born when the Blue Jays came into existence. Guys like me are old enough that I couldn't root for the Blue Jays as a kid because they didn't exist. So don't get too caught up in all of that, And as we're talking about nostalgia, if you look over my shoulder here, the old Bringer of Rain, Josh Donaldson's Player Weekend jersey, a great Blue Jay player that they had to let go. But it reminds me of the days that, remember when the Blue Jays had third basemen like Rance Mullenix, like Kelly Gruber, like Josh Donaldson? Yeah, it's possible to have a real third baseman. Couldn't sign Josh Donaldson to big money contract, but you can bring Marcus Semien in, can't you, Ross? Okay, I'm not going to let this digress into another Ross Atkins hate fest. Okay, I promise. Okay, stay with me. Stay with me. It's okay. So those are just some of the questions we got so far. Please, in the future, remember, go to US of J's. There'll be a little event called Loaded Questions with Fek. And start sending your questions in for the next episode. It would probably be the first week of the season. So maybe you can get your questions out there about, why did they keep this guy? Why did they keep Tellez up and not send him down since he has an option? How come Santiago Espinal was sent down, but they kept Joe Panik, or they kept Breivik Valera, or whoever it is that, they kept? There'll be a lot of roster questions. Certainly with the pitching staff, there's going to be a ton of roster questions. So, hang around with that. Okay. And then definitely keep in touch. Don't get me started on Semien. I know 66. It's one of the most hotly debated questions, I think, not only behind the scenes at Jays from the Couch, but on Twitter. There are some people that really think, wow, we got Marcus Semien. He was third in the MVP voting in 2019. Well, I go back to Ron Fairley, who was drafted by the Blue Jays in the expansion draft. Yeah, he played in a bunch of World Series. He was an all-star, but he was 37 years old, and he was Ron Fairley. Marcus Semien of 2021 playing at a position at second base is not the Marcus Semien of the Oakland A's in 2019. That was a shortstop. But that's part of the fun now of spring training. We're going to see how things play out. Is Semien a second baseman or a third baseman? I have an article coming out on jaysfromthecouch.com tomorrow, which would be Wednesday if you're watching this, not on the live stream. And I kind of talk about some of the things that you need to look for during spring training, and the whole idea about, I don't know who's on third. I mean, Biggio, because he's the kind of player that he is, and the team player that he is, and the smart player that he is, he's going to play third. And he did okay at the end of the year. I mean, he wasn't Brooks Robinson or Greg Nettles, but he was fine. Yes, Brooks Robinson and Greg Nettles played Major League Baseball, kiddies. You want me to give you more recent guys? Nolan Arenado. He's not Nolan Arenado or a Matt Chapman. Okay, they're not not that caliber third baseman, but he'll do an adequate job. But he's also ranked the 5th best second baseman in baseball. So, Semien coming in, that's a discussion for another day, but that's somebody you need to keep an eye on. Is he going to adjust and turn those double plays, and get into a rhythm with Bo Bichette? Now, of course, the game wasn't on today either in Toronto or Philadelphia, so nobody could see what they did today. But I understand that Bichette and Semien turned in a very nice double play. They seem to be in sync. Semien's a veteran, so who knows? It might work out. But since we're talking about nostalgia and Blue Jays history and things like that, there's another segment. Jays from the Couch does not spare money as far as production values. They let me buy a new ink cartridge anytime I need to. It's going to be a new end of the show segment called Blue Jays Way. And in essence, it's going to talk about the uniqueness of being a Blue Jays fan as opposed to a Yankee fan or a Red Sox or Dodgers or Cardinals or all the longtime traditional teams that people root for. Okay, this is a nation's team, not just a province or a city's team. This is a nation's team. This is a national team. So that in itself makes Blue Jays fan base unique and incredibly lucrative from a marketing standpoint. And I think at some point during the year, I want to do a show about that, about just that. And maybe it'll be a Blue Jays Way segment. But it's going to talk about, interesting historical things that come up, from Blue Jays history, playing a season, 2 years in a row, really, not in your home stadium. Okay, they will eventually get back to the Rogers Center, but they're going to be playing in Dunedin probably until the end of June when they come up for the Canada Day series with the Mariners. Not many teams have had to go through that. It's hard as a Blue Jay fan to even get merchandise in many cases. Okay, now if you're in Canada, obviously a lot more of the stores and the merchants are going to carry gear. But here, as an American Blue Jay fan, it was almost impossible to buy Blue Jay stuff up until about 2-3 years ago. Fanatics.com didn't have it. You couldn't get it at the MLB.com shop. I mean, you really had to hunt for it. And a lot of times the stuff that you could find wasn't authentic. And I'm someone that's you need to get authorized merchandise because that money does trickle down not only into the owner's pockets, but to the players' pockets. Okay. And those kind of things fund, long-term disability benefits and hardship programs that the union has in conjunction with MLB to help older players that are not around anymore. So it's important to get that type of stuff. So I want to kind of touch on things like that during Blue Jays Way. But to the very first Blue Jays Way tonight, I want to talk about the decision, the very unpopular decision, to simulcast Blue Jays broadcast, television, and radio. So there's no more radio team for the Blue Jays. You're going to hear Dan Schulman, Buck Martinez, Pat Tabler. For me personally, as someone that listens from afar, okay, the days of Tom Cheek and Jerry Howarth, they're long gone. It's not often you get a broadcast team like that. Very few teams have ever had it. And the Jays did on radio for a long, long time. You're not going to match that. Thank God Mike Wilner was gone, regardless of this decision, because he's the only Blue Jay announcer I can think of that was worse than Tony Kubek. And I know, Tony Kubek, he might be a Hall of Fame broadcaster and this and that and all. He was on NBC Game of the Week and all these big things. He was brutal. And Mike Wilner made Tony Kubek sound like Vin Scully. Okay, so thank God, he was put out of his misery early in the offseason. Ben Wagner, from all intents and purposes, loyal guy, good guy. Am I going to miss his play calls? No, I am not. I would much rather listen to Dan Schulman and Buck Martinez and Pat Tabler. And part of the fun is that Schulman has to keep Buck and Pat Tabler, focused, and on message. That's not an easy thing. I made a joke about, Ross Atkins being a rodeo clown. That's basically, that's kind of what Dan Schulman has to do with every broadcast, because Buck can drift, very knowledgeable guy. I love listening to Buck, but he has his moments. And Pat Tabler's Pat Tabler, entertaining, but you need to kind of reel him in every once in a while as well. So for me personally, it's not that big of a deal. I understand tradition. We've always had a separate radio broadcast team. Yes, you have always had that. Personally, yes, it is a business decision. It is a cost-cutting measure. I will concede that. I don't think that was the only consideration, though. It really was a matter of quality. And when you have a play-by-play guy of the caliber of Dan Schulman, and you can add Buck Martinez into that mix and Pat Tabler, you've got yourself a riveting broadcast, whether you're watching the game on TV or you're listening to it on the radio. Is it going to be hard? Is it tradition? Again, I grew up on radio. I had multiple transistors as a kid, picking up games. I grew up in New Jersey, but listening to the games in Pittsburgh and Philly, and Cleveland and Cincinnati and St. Louis, Atlanta, all the big 50,000 watt stations. That's what I did. I fiddled around till I got games, and I would have 3, 4, 5 games on at the same time. Baseball on the radio is my upbringing. It's how I came to love the game. But this is not as catastrophic a measure as it might appear. If it was totally getting rid of the broadcast team, getting rid of Schulman and Buck Martinez and Pat Tabler, yes, okay, that would be a bad decision that people should be up in arms. But this new Blue Jays way, I think you're going to grow to like it. It'll take a while, and there's going to be some adjustment for the team, especially I think the analysts, to become more descriptive of what's going on rather than just saying, well, let's look at the video or the replay shows. It's going to be a difficult adjustment, I think, at first. But Schulman's is the pro's pro. I mean, if he's not the best play-by-play guy around, he's certainly in the top 5. So, and this is not exclusive to Toronto also, folks. I mean, there are times that a lot of teams simulcast both broadcasts. They can use the excuse to phase it in as COVID restrictions and travel restrictions. And they're doing that under the cover of that. But ultimately, this is going to be the way things go. You're going to have national games, both in Canada, and you're going to have national games on the U.S. broadcasting outlets. You're going to have those teams. But really, for home games, simulcasting both TV and radio is going to be the way to go. And it's not just about cost. It's about controlling quality. It's also about maximizing advertising revenues. It's business. If you're okay paying George Springer $150 million over 6 years, and if you're okay paying Marcus Simeon $18 million over a year, or talking about extending Guerrero or Bichette or Biggio when you still have controlling interest, then you should be okay with this little adjustment. We're almost out of time. I do want to wrap up a couple of things by saying, do reach out at US of J's, both on Facebook, Twitter, and now on Instagram. Go to oh my God, Jace from the Couch. I forgot who's paying my check. Go to JaceFromTheCouch.com for terrific articles. They're pretty much coming out 1 or 2 a day. You're going to learn something every time you go to JaceFromTheCouch.com. Pick up the podcast Sundays, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Coming up on Thursday, Karen Suter is going to talk about pitchers, but not like the star pitchers, the younger pitchers like Simeon Woods Richardson. and some of the other Zoleta, some other younger pitchers that may be making an impact, on the Blue Jays in 2021. So make sure you tune into her show Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm the Fekless Wonder, Steve Fek. This has been the On Fix Circle, presented by jaysfromthecouch.com. I'll talk to you again next Tuesday.